you're getting data loss prevention, but it's through culture change. So it's the best way. Culture is king, as they say. Culture beats policy every day. And so
hello and welcome again to another video from Shadowsight. My name is David Graham, and joining me today will be another member from Shadowsight, Christopher McNaughton. Today we'll be talking about some of the key features that organisations should be looking for when exploring options in terms of insider risk management platforms. And this has come from a bunch of recent inquiries we've had from organisations who are looking and turning their attention to insider risk management platforms more and more as it's becoming such a critical part of their requirement to secure their environment. So stick around, we're going to delve into that a lot deeper, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome again, Chris. Thanks for joining us today again and taking some time out of your hectic schedule to have a chat. Appreciate that.
no worries.
So, Chris, today, look, we've been receiving recently a number of inquiries from clients about what sort of features they should be looking for when they're in the market for an insider risk management platform. I guess today I was hoping to tap into your knowledge so I can go back to some of them and explain to them what are those features that they should be looking for. So if you're able to maybe touch on some of them today, Chris, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Look, the first thing, and we're seeing over the last probably 12 to 18 months, nearly 2 years, people migrating from DLP tools to insider risk management tools. And that's been a very positive change as people start to see that, the enhanced capabilities. But as you say, what is it and what do we start to look at? What are the features we look for in an IRM tool? And one of the first things is, what data do we feed into that tool? And it's not like a seam. It's not, get every log you've got in the organisation and pile it all in and hope to get some value out of it. Obviously, it's not that, as we know, Dave.
Yeah.
So this is around what risk is there in the organisation? What visibility can I see based on current logs? And most of the time, when we're doing a risk engagement, most of the organisations have already got the logs in their organisation anyway, whether it's a 365 log or their customer database, their CRM, or they might have a DLP tool already, which we can use, or CrowdStrike or something. And so it's about pick the log sources that are going to provide visibility of user activity, pick those, and from those, you're going to get the visibility and of the risk that is important to you.
That's interesting, actually, because, so a couple of points there. As we've experienced, organisations already have the data. They have the feeds. It's often, what do we do with all this data? We're not seeing what we need to see. It's made a good point, actually. What is the risk of the organisation? So they all differ in terms of their risk. So I guess once you identify the risk, then do we then identify what data do we need to look at to address that risk?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Any other features that we should be suggesting?
Yeah, so look, I think every CISO and CIO that we speak to wants to be able to leverage that force multiplier. They want to be able to integrate with their existing systems. And so for us, well, we've got we might implement an inside risk management tool such as a Shadowsight. How does that help the organisation from that point on? And so what we like to do is integrate with, maybe there's a DLP tool there, or integrate with a risk platform, or integrate with something so that particularly a data classification policy in an organisation, so you're getting extra benefit out of it across the board.
Okay. Yeah. So integration is very key, of course.
Yeah.
In terms of integration, we do a lot with risk scoring, and the data alone isn't so much the answer to the problems. It's what you do with
Yeah.
the data. So
Correct.
certainly we do a lot with machine learning and more recently with AI. So is intelligent analytics, where does that fit in relation to a feature that perhaps would exist in a good risk management platform?
Yeah, it's a great point you make, and as you rightly say, it's great to have all these log sources and great to have them squirreled away in a seam somewhere. But unless you're doing something with them, they're actually of no value. And so, when we start to have these conversations with an organisation about where do you think your risk is coming from, of course we'll identify some unknowns, but where is the risk? And once you start to do that, then we're risk scoring those risk activities based on our machine learning algorithms in ShadowSight and so forth. But unless you are using those algorithms intelligently and your risk scoring, you're really not getting the maximum value. The key point there is that you need to be able to move with the risk of the organisation. So as we know, every organisation will have mergers, acquisitions, big things will happen, such as working from home, or there'll be a new project which is really highly confidential, and having a static rule base it just doesn't fit the bill anymore. You've got to move with the trends and with the risk of the organisation.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, certainly. I mean, even with offboarding, even onboarding to a degree, there is other elements of that. So, okay, awesome. Talk to me, Chris, about scalability and how that's important as a feature.
Yeah, well, that's a great follow-up question, right? Because as organisations change and their workforce changes and things change about the business, again, those static rules they're just not going to follow. They're not going to assess the risk properly. You're not going to get the visibility you need. So as the business gets bigger or smaller or changes, or new systems are implemented, whatever that might be. So there might be a new focus, they might start using Salesforce, for example, and they might add another, a lot of customers. Well, they might start operating online. We need to be able to scale quickly. And also the tool that you use needs to be able to go out to scale with the business and reach all of the population very quickly. So it needs to be constantly scalable and flexible without having to have constant professional services. That's the killer for most of these tools. If you've got to get professional services in for 2 or 3 days a month, well, you're not getting your ROI at that point.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, interesting. I guess too, with scalability, I mean, organisations are forever employing new technologies, trying to stay that one step ahead of the competitor. And certainly this would have to scale with the new technologies that are coming out. Great point. In terms of, I guess, regulatory compliance, what are we looking for there, Chris, in terms of being able to keep compliant in this world?
So good question. So I guess that is, we work a lot with regulated organisations as well as non-regulated organisations. But one of the questions we get is, how does this help me with regulation and compliance, whether it's PCI DSS or, some of our offshore clients, GDPR, or even some of the health regulations. And the point there is that it makes compliance very, very, very easy, because we can pull some reports out. And probably the key point here is that when the regulator does knock on the door, and Dave, you and I have both sat in front of APRA and in these meetings and so forth, and it can be really uncomfortable when you've got a lot of unknowns. And so particularly in the insider risk space, when you can say to the regulator, here is our process, here's what it works, and you know what, here's what it looks like, here's our activity this month, this week, today. It gives the regulators a great deal of comfort.
It does, and I guess on a more day-to-day, but not day-to-day, but certainly on a more regular basis than that situation is your auditors. And we're constantly dealing with auditors from typically your Big Four and others that have come into our clients' environments and are starting to ask a lot of questions. And so a feature of a good management tool, I would say, is being able to answer those questions for the client. And so that would be something that I would be looking to have in any sort of insider risk management platform is its ability to deal with those internal audits that go on for the organisation. Yeah. Hey, alerting. Now, this is something that's always a big talking point, because we've come from backgrounds in organisations where there's an enormous amount of alerting that goes on, to a point that you would probably agree with me, Chris, that the function of the tool becomes almost useless because the alerts are overwhelming teams. So what are some of the features we think are good for alerting?
Yeah, look, you make a good point there, Dave. And I was actually having a conversation, I think I mentioned to you the other day, I was presenting at a conference earlier this week, and a guy came up to me who was using, he was operations leader, he was using a DLP tool, and he was getting about 1,000 alerts a day. And I said, every day, 1,000 alerts a day. And he was very deflated. It was a shattered man, to be honest. But, you know, the important thing, and this is a feature of Shadowside, obviously, but the important thing is around alerting. And it needs to be, again, we go back to scalable. It needs to be able to get to all of the organisation, and it needs to work for the organisation. So, for example, you know, we're big advocates of, if, you know, we have some unsanctioned activity, get that out to the manager of the person and let them address it with the employee, because the chances are it's very quickly addressed, and it's probably through lack of awareness or you know, we can have that corrective action very quickly. So it's important that that's timely. But also, if the organisation is, you know, has a small information security team, and that team is responsible for the alerting, well, you know, they've got to be able to get to those alerts and consume them and actually do some good. So you know, with Shadowside, obviously, we'll bubble up alerts that are the highest risk. And what we find is that as the analyst or even the manager, whoever it might be, is addressing those risks, those tickets, if you like, or those alerts, that it's tweaking the algorithm in the background. So what's happening, instead of that 1,000 alerts a day, you know what, tomorrow you're not getting 1,000 alerts, you might be getting 500. And in a couple of weeks, you know, that's very quickly diminishing down to only a handful of alerts. And that's really key, because unless you're able to do that, those sort of platforms very quickly become shelfware and very ineffective.
Yeah, and I know, very true. And in terms of features, I mean, I know we do a lot in terms of being able to take that information and feed that back into our product to enable the organisation to learn about itself and what it's prepared to accept as its risk and what it's not prepared to accept. So that's a good point, which I guess when we talk about risk inside of risk management platforms, people think data loss prevention, and that's all it is. And that's not all it is about. I mean, we had a case only this week where we prevented some fraud through our monitoring, which is a great example. And we'll talk about that another day. But I guess on the topic of data loss prevention, let's talk about that. What is the best feature, I guess you would say, Chris, for data loss prevention in terms of a platform? What should we be looking at for there?
So I think the key point there is to remember what we know over many years, Dave, of actually monitoring users, and the key point there is that it's something like 99.9% of all the alerts we see are inadvertent or through lack of awareness, because what we know is that people actually want to do the right thing. And so when somebody does, I don't know, from a data loss perspective, when they do send that email to Gmail with a you know, restricted file on it, or they upload it to Dropbox, or they do whatever, they're generally doing that because that's all they know. And so when we remind them, hey, there's a better way to do that, you know, you can use the VPN and you can use your laptop, or there's other more secure ways to do that, we don't see those repeat offenders. And so, you know, for our perspective, using Shadowside and other insider risk management tools, what's happening is you're getting data loss prevention, but it's through culture change. So it's the best way. Culture is king, as they say. Culture beats policy every day. And so by by leveraging that vast majority of the user base and teaching them and showing them the way and guiding them, you're actually getting very, very effective data loss prevention, because users want to do the right thing and they simply start doing things more securely.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you again, Chris. We've delved into it a little bit in detail today, but we make no apologies for that. If anyone would like to speak to us further and perhaps dive even further into the detail, very happy to do that with you. Please reach out to us on LinkedIn and visit our website at shadowsight.io. Chris, again, thank you for your time. We look forward to the next video in the series. And just as a final note, if anyone would like to follow us, please make sure that you hit the like button. Please provide any comments, share the video with your colleagues, and hope you found it valuable. Until next time, thanks, Chris, and we'll chat again.
Thanks, Dave.